Okay, Gretchen. Well, why don't you start by introducing yourself, talk a little bit about your background and what you're doing these days, and then I
Sure,
will try to steer the
sure.
conversation.
Well, my name's Gretchen Badami, and I'm a doctor of Oriental Medicine. I am an acupuncturist. I'm an herbalist. I focus a lot on diet, nutrition, lifestyle, internal medicine. And as far as my background goes, I've been practicing for almost 2 decades now, in a variety of capacities. I have been a professor at multiple traditional Chinese medicine schools. I had a stint in administration where I worked for about 5 years at an acupuncture college out in California as an associate dean. And what else about myself? I also host a podcast that I just recently launched on holistic medicine and wellness, also focusing on mostly on East Asian medicine and herbs. And as far as prior to my career, I also have a background in East Asian philosophy. I went to divinity school and studied um, Vedic thought, Buddhist thought, a variety of Indian philosophies. At one point, I wanted to be a professor of Indian philosophy. And I also have a background in psychology. So I incorporate a lot of aspects of mental health into my practice as well.
Very cool. I love all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do a podcast with one of my clients, Luhan Matus. He has a his company's called Parallel Perception. And they get a lot into Buddhist, Taoist, Vedic kinds of frameworks. So
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
cool.
The underlying philosophies of those traditions, which also if you're looking at East Asian medicine, those philosophies are in many ways incorporated right into the mindset of the mind body paradigm. And so I think it's not uncommon for a lot of people involved in the medicine that I practice to have some sort of a background in studying those philosophies, whether it be intellectually or the mind body version of those philosophies, which might be something like Taoist practices of, body movement or Tai Chi, Qigong, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Okay, so the I'm still getting my footing a little bit with this podcast, but the primary things that I want to address on these chats is one is what the clinical practitioner pathway looks like and kind
Mm,
of where we have mm, maybe let down. I don't want to say let each other down because it's sort of like we all went to school and we thought we'd get a job and
yeah.
uh, and all of that. But right now there's a thing going on where schools are getting shut down by the feds
Yeah.
left and right, including some of the oldest schools, the most prolific schools.
Yeah.
Um, and that's something that I want to talk about because what I do is marketing essentially for clinical practitioners. And so there's more opportunity than there's ever been. There's more tools and resources that anybody can learn how to use and deploy. And for some reason, 80% of practitioners fail within the first 5 years.
Yeah.
And so, I think there's a I'm trying to be delicate, so I'm choosing my words carefully, but I think it's normal to feel like there is some kind of fight between allopathic medicine models and traditional medicine.
Yeah.
And so when somebody like the Fed comes in and they start shutting down schools, we're feeling maybe accosted or um, scrutinized in some kind of way. But they're not wrong. Like if 80% of people that take on a six-figure student loan debt come out of it making as much or less money than they would have had they not had that debt, that is something that should probably be addressed.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that shutting down the schools is the way to address it, but it's something that we could talk about why this happened. So
Yeah.
you've had a long career, you've been successful, you've held a lot of different roles, and you probably have a more comprehensive view of the landscape of what students go through, of what practitioners go through, of what schools go through. And I'm wondering if you can speak to that. Where do you think we missed the mark?
Yeah. It's a big question, and the discussion around it is multifaceted for sure, because there's not one easy answer. And certainly, each school has its own specific struggles due to its specific circumstances. So I can't speak for all of them, and I won't even speak specifically to the schools that I've worked at, but I do have some understanding of the landscape. And there's a couple different ways to start this conversation. And I think first, many of your listeners may already be aware of this, but when you think about what a student undertakes when they decide to study this medicine, right, it's graduate school. So this student has already either gone through and received their BA, done some sort of undergrad, either to completion or credits, right? Because in order to start graduate school for, I'm just going to say TCM, you have to have certain credits already under your belt. So this student is already going to be of a certain age, having completed some college coursework or a full 4-year degree. And they may already have student loans under their belt from that undergraduate work. Then they enter acupuncture school, right? And whether they're in a school where they're just studying acupuncture, which some states and some schools allow that, which that is usually a 3-year degree, or if they're studying the entirety of the TCM program, which includes the herbal medicine tract, and those programs are usually 4 years. These programs are full-time for the most part. There's some exceptions for the students, but they are intended to be full-time programs, either 3 years or 4 years. Now, when we look at these schools, a majority of them are in urban centers, right, where the cost of living is going to be quite high for the student, and the student has to choose to either pay an amount in rent, or they have to live far away from the school and they need to commute. And then the student has to go full-time, which means that they don't have the opportunity to work, because we know that the course load for these schools is a lot. It's no joke going to study East Asian medicine. I actually, myself, I had gone to graduate school at the University of Chicago, which was one of the most reputed colleges, not only in the country, but in the world. And I felt that studying East Asian medicine and going to acupuncture school was harder, right? Because of the rigor and the time and everything that's involved, and you never get breaks, right? So there's a lot of pieces that go into many students not being able to work while they're in the program. They can't continue previous careers that they may have had if they quit a career and went back to school. So there are a lot of financial constraints on students when they choose to enter these programs. What I have seen in counseling students, and also through the admissions processes, are that the students who are set up best are students who either are straight out of undergrad and they still have the support, both financially and maybe still living at home even, of their parents, or students who have family support, maybe a partner who is working to support them through the program, or they had a career where they have a nest egg or some money to support them while they go through the program. The other option, which is usually successful, is if someone does choose to go through the program part-time, and they may spread the program out to be 5 or 6 years, but they're working part-time so they don't have to take out loans. But the students who are going to struggle the most are going to be the students who have to attend the program full-time, take out not only full loans for the cost of the program, which can be exorbitant, right? The cost of the program for the master's can be anywhere from $50,000 to $80,000. If you're doing an entry-level doctorate, it can be about $80,000. Or if you're doing a master's and then a doctorate, it's going to, run $90,000 to $1,000, right? So the cost of the program is exorbitant. But then those students, because they're studying full-time, also have to take out cost of living expenses if they don't have someone supporting them, which means they're going to take out an additional, for a 4-year program, probably $40,000, $10,000 to support themselves every year that they go through the program. So the loans that these students will have when they finish school is huge. And then what happens? They finish the program. They have to wait 3 to 6 months to complete all of their national exams or their California exams. I mean, it's different states have different exam structures, but whatever, to complete their exams. If they're not thinking about these things in advance, they have to find a place to practice. They have to have money squirreled away for their malpractice insurance, for the rent for their office, for the cost of staff, office staff to answer the phones, to do their billing, for their supplies. There are so many costs at the outset that then the new practitioner also has to account for. So this is daunting. And how many years does it take a person to build up a practice? This is if they're an independent business person. There are some jobs around the country where there are offices where you can work under a practitioner and they will forego rent and they'll just give you, an amount of money per patient. And those situations may be a little bit more amenable for a new practitioner. It depends. But we don't have a ready-made system like the conventional medical system to just funnel our graduates into jobs that support them with health insurance, that support them with income that will allow them to pay back their loans and meet their cost of living. So that's the situation, right? That's the background of the situation for your new graduates as they enter the workforce. All the things that have to be considered that are going to be difficult for them financially. I know we're going to get into talking about the schools and what they are doing and what they're doing either right or wrong, but that's the landscape. What more would you like me to say about that? Anything?
No, I think you set the scene pretty well. For me, when I went to school, and I've talked to several practitioners. In fact, I started surveying some people on Facebook around this and just basically asking them what the biggest challenges are that they face as a practitioner.
Yeah.
And one of the common answers is that for whatever reason, we enter into school thinking that we're going to get a job at the end of it, as opposed to become an entrepreneur and start a clinic and have to build and launch and scale a practice.
Yeah.
In addition to that, there's not really you're not really oriented in a way where you sort of understand that this means to some degree you have to do as many treatments as you can to hit your overheads. And by the way, your overheads, depending on the market that you're in, could be anywhere from $30,000 to $70,000 a month just to break even.
Right.
If you want, God forbid, you want to pay a salaried practitioner to do some of the treatments with or for you. God forbid you have, somebody that's actually a clinic director or marketing or social media support or all of the other things. So, it's I don't want to say that we're set up for failure, but I do want to say that there's a way to at least set the expectations of what you're signing up for and potentially even show us some pathways. Not everybody is, like you said, in a position where after all of that student loan debt and all of that time spent, they're ready to just put a lease, sign a 6-month or 12-month lease.
Yeah. It is daunting. And the amount of work required for the solo practitioner who is in and of themselves a business person, and let's just call them entrepreneurs, right? For that individual practitioner, I don't think that that's changed over the past 40 years, since this medicine, really began in the United States in the 80s and 90s. People were always going out alone. I would actually, argue to say that we actually have more structure and more support for integrative and alternative medicine now than existed back then. But we did not have the exhausting, daunting, ridiculous cost of higher education and the loans and the cost of overhead and the cost of living that is imbalanced to what a practitioner may be earning. When you look at what people were charging for treatments, even back in the 80s and 90s, and you look at what they're charging now, and then you look at what the cost of living was back 40 years ago and what it is now, they have not increased at the same rate. So it's not necessarily that our medicine has created new problems. It's that the system surrounding us has changed and we have not changed to support our graduates, our practitioners in their profession to meet the changes in society. And, if we want to lead this to the schools, which we can start talking about in just a minute, what I can say, and I can say a lot about this, I am very sympathetic to the schools. The schools, certainly each individual institution will have their own struggles, and some may be mismanaged. Some may have nefarious business practices. I can't speak to everyone, and some may be better or worse than others. But for the ones that I am very familiar with, for some of those schools that, when you look at the fact that In 2015, there were 63 schools. I think it was 63, approximately. At this point now, in 2025, there's about 50, 13, 15, a number of them have closed. Um, the schools are not, the people running them are not bad people. For the most part, they have very good intentions and they believe in the medicine. Some of these schools are family run. Some of them have existed for 40 years. They have good intentions, but are they up to the task to meeting what is happening now in our society, which is not their fault, but are they up to that task? Do they have the support? And what is beating them down? What is making it difficult for them to support their grads or provide what is necessary in this day and age? So it's very, very complex, which we can talk about. So yeah, so there's that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This is I think it's easy to want to assign blame to the problem,
Yeah,
and um that's not always a fair exercise. There's certainly it's a complicated conversation.
yeah,
Um Even I think even the people it's not like it's just in acupuncture that 80% of businesses fail within the first 5 years.
right.
That applies across the board of any small business.
Yes,
So let's at least mention that most people just aren't good at business, or they can't stick it out, or they don't have the budget. There's a lot of reasons that businesses fail. Some of it has to do with a lack of understanding of how to launch and scale a business, but the kind of personal experience and journey that you have to go through to find success is
yeah.
not something that is probably discussed enough unless you're in like Tony Robbins circles or those kinds of things. So
Exactly. And so that's one big issue, right? Is that when you think about when these students go through the school and even when they apply for the programs, they want to be practitioners. They have goodness in their hearts to practice holistic medicine. They want to heal people. They want to provide an alternative to mainstream medicine, which we can talk all day about the issues and the problems within that structure. So these people just want to heal and be doctors, be medical professionals. They may not be set up to be good business people. They might not want to. They may have an aversion to being a business person, or realistically speaking, spending all of their time and energy going through 4 years of graduate school to learn how to be the best practitioner possible. They don't have the energy and the mental capacity to take in information that you would learn in business school. Most of the schools provide from 20 to 40 hours of business classes, which is usually 2 units or sometimes a total of 4 units. And those are given to the students in their final year of the program, usually in their last term or their last couple semesters. By that time, students are preparing for boards. They are exhausted beyond belief from 4 years of full-time college. They just want to get out and practice. They're worried about studying for boards, and their heads are crammed with all of this information about points and herbs and internal medicine. So you get them into these business classes, and in those business classes, they have to learn how to apply for their license, what sort of paperwork. They usually get a whole list of information about forms to sign and legalities and what sorts of malpractice or insurance to get. And then ethics. Usually, a large number of those hours are taken up with medical ethics. So, how much time is actually spent on teaching the students marketing, social media, any business skills at all? And aside from that, how much brain space is anything that is mentioned actually, like how much can the students actually take in? And with the information that they're given, how much of that can they actually implement in the time between learning it in the course, graduating, studying for and taking their boards, finding a place to practice, getting all of their ducks in a row, like their paperwork, their logistics, the trying to set up a website, and then actually their first day in practice. I can guarantee you, and I know this for a fact because again, I have mentored students in my administrative role all the way from when they entered the program through preparing for their boards, through those classes, and then graduation. And then I have been there to support them as they've been alumni. I can guarantee you they're not set up for success. Some of it is due to a shortcoming on the school's part, but the schools can't increase the length of their program. They're already 4 years. How can they possibly add business classes into their program?
right.
There's a lot of difficulties.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely not an easy thing to address. What you just said though is something that I hadn't considered. I'm going to digress just a little bit, but
Yeah, yeah.
in marketing, you have um, you you study psychographics and the psychology of buying, and so there's an efficacy component to that, which means just to kind of a rudimentary example, it's like if you try to sell somebody three things for $5 versus one thing for 15 and two free things, there's that feels better. It feels like it's a better deal, and because of that, the amount of value they place on the thing that they've purchased is going to increase because of that perceived value. This is something that you have to contend with when you're making offers and when you're communicating with the market, that essentially you don't have an opportunity to educate in an informed way. And
Mm,
so in what you said about having the business classes be one of the last things that you do, you're full-blown senioritis, you're worried about your boards, you don't know what's going to happen when you get released into the world, and you're worried about everything. Essentially, you're burnt out a little bit.
yeah.
And depending on how well you did, the prospect of taking your boards, it's extra daunting for some people.
Yes.
I, I was one of them. I was definitely one of them.
Right.
So,
Can you even get into practice to get
yeah,
licensed?
right, right.
Yes.
So maybe something simple like the efficacy of, how you give any businesses. I remember not so much, like I do remember focusing on like scope of practice types of things. We went a little bit over insurance billing, and that's always changing, right? So for an individual who's also a practitioner to be able to keep up with all the insurance billing codes and all this kind of stuff, that's nuts. But they also don't show you how to like hire a biller per se. But we did have to do is create a business plan without
Mhm.
feeling like you were taught how to make a business plan, how to do a
Yeah.
financial projection, how to figure out all the component parts of creating a useful business plan. Uh,
Yeah.
there's no discussion about securing funding, getting credit, like the benefits of having a PLLC, or in your state, do you need PLLC versus an LLC? That's something that state to state is gonna differ. And I know a lot of practitioners that have LLCs in states they are supposed to have PLLCs. So there's just like a certain basic amount of information that needs to be disseminated responsibly to people
Yes.
that are going to be obligated to be accountable to this system that they're joining.
Yes.
And maybe if we just introduced these classes earlier, maybe if there was some kind of aspect of our internship that involved not necessarily apprenticing, but it's certainly at least visiting other businesses that have solved some of these problems and are successful.
Yes.
Maybe if there was
Yes.
some kind of network where you could put people into places, like I can tell you how much value it would have to a practitioner that's in their first 5 years to be able to have an intern come and help them with their admin stuff, or even just changing over the beds, or like there's so much to be offered to somebody that's coming out of school that's not necessarily board certified yet and ready to start practicing, that they could do for the like there's so many ways that we come together and solve some of these problems. But how these get implemented, who you
How?
to where do we
Yeah.
start? Where do we start?
It
That's
is it is very difficult. And, as I said, the schools have a bit of their hands tied because they are not business programs, and we can't expect them to be. There is so much information that students need to learn in school that it is difficult to add in more. And again, can the students even be in a place to take in that information when they have so much else on their plate? I love your idea of trying to add it in earlier so that students right off the bat, when they begin, know what they are in for, know what will be expected of them down the road. And as they go through the program, they can be learning in small doses about these things as they go. Um, and preparing for them. When I worked in administration, I did what was called third year counseling with all of our students, and in their third year, I would bring them into my office, and I actually had multiple sheets of documentation set up for them with lists, telling them all of this information that I just told you, telling them, listen, this is what is going to come for you down the line in 12 to 18 months. You're going to be responsible for all of these costs, all of these things. You need to start thinking about this now to save up money and to plan for what's going to happen for you when you graduate, so that as soon as you pass that board exam, you're not left like wondering, how you can practice, and that was very, very helpful for the students. This was back in 2015. So if I could do it now, I would do it very differently, and I would do it more. But that was what we tried to do back then. Thinking of things like marketing programs, the fact that now we have Instagram and we have all of this digital media, we have, CEU classes for practitioners. What can we provide for students while they're going through the program to educate them to fill in the gaps that the schools can't provide for marketing professionals, business professionals, people who are set up to give them what they need to become, you know, integrative medical practitioners. Yes, I mean this is one major consideration, even for schools to incorporate outside professionals or to let the students know that programs like this exist or services like this exist.
Yeah, I think that one of the ways that it could be addressed is certainly through CEUs, but also the internship starts almost from the beginning, right? And that is sort of your window into what it's going to be like to be a practitioner.
Yeah.
And so for me, what makes sense is that's where these systems need to be implemented. That's where they need to learn how to use an EHR. When I was in school, it was kind of before there were EHRs, so everything was
Yeah,
still
me too. Right in a paper.
and so you sort of learned how to take soap notes
Yeah.
but it wasn't formalized. It wasn't like these are the things that you need to cover in your soap notes. It wasn't structured at least not in my school. It wasn't
Yeah.
structured in a way where you were really learning a process that is going to enable you to look at 6 months worth of files and see how well they're progressing over time, or that you make sure that you're staying within scope, or that but using the tools that you're ultimately going to end up having to use in the marketplace. If you could do that while you're still in school, that would be so big. It would, first of all, take away the technical overwhelm of everything. You would be practiced on entering a new patient into a database. You would be practiced on posting a Facebook ad. You would be practiced on understanding what the different ad platforms are and what kind of
Yes.
costs. And then they could even do projects where you're literally gamifying the profitability of the student clinics. And so one class could be competing against another class, and who brought in the most money, who have treated the most
Oh, I
patients.
love it.
Like this is where we can practice and play and do it in a way that is not so freaking overwhelming.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if first time you log into an EHR is after you graduate, there's a problem with that.
Yes, yes. And so giving them that experience while they're in the clinic of using the technology, using the marketing and the media,
Mhm.
making it fun so that it doesn't feel like a daunting, boring, exhausting extra thing that they're learning. I know when I reflect back on my time in the clinic, which I mean, I love my time in the clinic and I was always very, very busy. I actually, instead of like having 3 patients, I would often book 4 or 5 and I'd be running around to like all these different rooms. But many times, if the patient didn't show up, or if you only have a couple patients, you provide them the formula or you give them the acupuncture, and then you're sitting around.
Yeah.
What can we do? Clinic, I know when I was in school, and this was almost 20 years ago, was seen as you just do your clinical um, you practice using your clinical skills, and then that's it. You sit around.
Yeah.
What if the marketing, the media, the technical, what if all of those office management skills are somehow incorporated within clinic as well? That's a really cool idea, which I never thought of until you said it.
Absolutely. Not just that, we had you could get what do you call it, work, you get placed to work hours in the pharmacy or something like that, and I think that was even what they paid us was subsidized. um but like all the people in the office at the student clinic were employees, and so obviously every role in the clinic could be facilitated by somebody who's a student, and that also would help jumpstart your understanding of what it looks like to run and manage a business. um just answering the phones and knowing what to say and not feeling nervous about it. You know,
Yeah,
knowing how to file the hard copy files. I don't know if we do that anymore, but
I know. I
all
hope not. I don't know. I'm sure some schools still do. I know that many of them are now integrating the electronic EHRs, but I'm sure not all of them.
yeah, whatever all the roles are, we should have a chance to practice all of that, and then of
Yeah.
course seminars are another way. If the curriculums can't be beefed out any more than they already have, if they're already doing their best and covering as many hours. I mean, because it is intense. Like mine was a trimester
Yeah.
structure, which meant that we did 4 years worth of education in 10 trimesters. So it's just over 3 years, not quite four,
Yeah.
but you're going year round. You don't get any breaks during that
You
whole
don't get
time.
any breaks. It's exhausting. Yeah.
Absolutely exhausting. And oh, I lost my train of thought. Where was I going with that?
If the schools can't beef up the
Uh,
curriculum, yeah.
yes, occasionally we would have people come in on the weekends and offer a 6 hour seminar and like, master tongue points or something like that.
Yeah.
The reason that we couldn't do that with business related uh seminars as well.
Yeah,
But
it is true.
yeah, so these are just my thoughts. I obviously don't have the answer. I just want to get the conversation going and talk
Yeah.
to people that have been in the system and understand like the challenge. What is the challenge? Are we stewarding these students in a way that we're setting them up for success or not? And
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
feels
There
like
is, like I said, there is so much. And I mean, I could talk for another half hour about some of the, challenges for the schools themselves with regards to the federal government, the loans, and the gainful employment rules that the schools are beholden to. That, again, is not the school's fault. We could talk about that if you wanted, but that's a whole nother conversation. But the schools are doing their best. And at any given semester, the schools may be in the red or in the black, depending on student enrollment. And so, they are doing their best. Again, I don't know about the intentions of all of them, but I do know that the ones I've worked with are very well intentioned and they are trying their best to provide the best education for the students. But there are a lot of barriers within society and within the structure for the students, some of them within the school's purview to change and some not. Some I think needs to come from outside sources like you're saying. And then the fact that as a outside medical community, the integrative alternative, whatever you want to call us, we're not part of that structure that feeds into jobs. And that's another problem. Do we look for more support from ACOM for the schools, which I would say yes. I could talk a lot about that. Do we look for more support from our state organizations and our national organizations? And how do we get involved to get that support too? So there are many pieces, many moving parts.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't want to end on a downer there at all, but it's
Oh, do you want to end on a positive note?
yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
so the positive note though is that society is more poised for integrating us into the medical system. We actually, and there's plenty of statistics out there that show that we are needed more than ever, that the general public is more open to using our services more than ever. So if we can find the ways to reach the patients, right, and support ourselves to be able to be in practice with those patients that we reach, right, we are very poised for success and we have a huge earning potential. Those 20% of businesses that don't fail, the people in our field who do succeed at being business people have the opportunity to make tons of money. You look at the people who are successful in our field and they make gobs of money. So it is possible, right? So what can we do to support them and educate them to be able to be successful?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been doing some research on that, and right now the TAM, the total addressable market for acupuncture, and so this would not just be for practitioner related income. It could be anything connected to acupuncture. So the tools that you use in your clinic, whether that's needles or devices, that could be herbs. That
Yeah.
there's it's not just practitioner fees, but the acupuncture market right now is somewhere. Oh, let's see if I can remember it. It's somewhere around, it's in the billions. It's somewhere around 30 or 40 billion. Don't quote me on that. I can't remember the exact figure, but what I do remember is that they're anticipating in the next 40 years that it becoming $1 trillion market. That
Yeah.
what they're seeing is that there's more and more people that are open to alternative medicine, integrative medicine. There's more and more people that are kind of jaded and skeptical about the allopathic models and
Yeah.
sort of what we went through specifically with regard to COVID and
Yeah.
being disenfranchised with what we're being told and all of that. And so yeah, you're absolutely right. Like it's become more important than it ever has been. And so either we're going to figure this out. Like I will say that the what the market demands usually is what drives commerce. It's usually what people are going to find solutions to the things that people want to pay for. And whether the schools all shut down or not, that means acupuncture will survive. But what we're looking at right now is because schools are closing, it puts more of a burden on the people that are already in practice to stay in practice until we weather this storm. And that means
Yeah.
there's a huge opportunity for you because there's going to be less students coming out, at least for a little while until we figure this out. And the demand is increasing, not decreasing. And so that means you're going to have to be busy. So
Yes.
my mission with all of this is I want to make sure that every practitioner out there can get rich. They understand
Yes.
that
Yes.
that
And the
prosperity is necessary in their practices. And
yeah, the potential and the possibility is there. It does exist, and people can and are very, very successful. We, like you said, we just need to figure this out. And thank you for doing what you're doing because that's one piece of the puzzle.
absolutely, I think yeah, yeah, I think we've gone around the bend on that one. So is there anything else that you would like to touch on before we wrap it up? I still have time, so if you're still up for chatting a little longer, there's plenty of other subjects that we can.
Oh, well, I mean, like I said, if you really wanted to get into some of the nitty-gritty of, what is happening to the schools, and I mean, we could talk about that. It's detailed and it's nuanced, so it might be worth it for a whole separate another conversation. I think that and there are going to have to be other people within that area of the schools who figure out how to handle that. But talking about the success of the practitioners, yeah, I mean, I think we've covered a lot of the details. I think that for students, making them aware of what they're going to face 4 years down the line and making them very aware that they've chosen a profession and an industry where, as much as they're going to be healers, they need to be business people, and they can't have a poverty mentality. They can't have oh, I'm only going to treat and not promote myself mentality. And if they are either an introvert or somebody who's not comfortable doing those things, they need to plan on hiring someone to do those jobs, which is perfectly acceptable. Right? Look at people in the conventional medical system who are doctors. They're not necessarily the ones who are running their business plans. They have assistants, they have front desk staff. If they're independent doctors, they may even have their own social media or whatever, but they have outsourced, they have other people doing those jobs. So, when students first begin studying the medicine, they need to think about who they are, ask themselves these tough questions, know the reality of the road ahead for them, know how exciting it can be and how potentially profitable it can be, but figure out during those 4 years what they want their practice to look like and how they're going to need to structure that practice so that when they get out, they can immediately implement those steps. Because if you have $100,000 in loans, you can't wait for people to just be referred to you and anticipate that building your practice over 5 years from referrals is going to give you enough money to support yourself and pay back your loans, right? You're going to need to get right out of the gate practicing and marketing yourself. So yeah, just knowledge is power. Um, so students need to know. They need to have a plan.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They need to know what they signed up for, what it actually looks like, and what
Yeah,
their options are. There's not just one path.
yeah,
I think everybody ends up feeling like they got to start a clinic and they need to make as much money in their clinic as they can, maybe open multiple locations and hire other acupuncturists or even other modalities.
yeah,
But they need to understand that there's a lot of ways that you can be a practitioner and provide value and healing to,
yeah.
and laying those out, I think would be a really good thing. So I do have one last question.
Oh, sure.
Okay, so let's say you're hypothetically the student that is you're going through your boards, you're about to be board certified, you've graduated, you are completely overwhelmed, you're stressed out, you don't really know the pathway forward, but this is what you signed up for and you're taking the steps. What would your advice be for somebody that is fresh out of school? Let's say they don't have support from their family. Let's say they don't have a spouse that can cover the bills,
Oh, yeah,
but maybe they're still in their 20s and
yeah.
they've got grit and energy and all the enthusiasm and hope in the world. How what would your advice be to try first?
Yeah. Well, I guess two things. One is don't be paralyzed by fear, right? You have a certain number of steps that you have to take to just start practicing, right? And so getting yourself set up to do that is tantamount, paramount, right? You have to do that. But as you're doing that, as you're taking the logistical steps necessary, because you can't just wait for people to walk through your door, you need to be the person who makes them aware that you exist. Think about who you are, right? Be honest with yourself, be true and authentic to yourself. Do I want to be the person who sees, 5 patients an hour running, 4 or 5 different rooms? Do I like that? Does that mean that I'm going to have staff to support me to do that? Do I only want to treat fertility patients? And do I want to spend an hour with each one of them? How do I structure my practice so that I can make a living doing that? I'm going to need to be some sort of concierge or boutique. I'm going to need to charge, maybe have patients on a fertility plan, and $400 for my initial consult. And then, they buy a package, or who knows. But think about what is best so that you can love what you're doing and be authentic to yourself and your skill set, whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, or you want to be busy or a slow practitioner. But do it, right? Take those steps and just get yourself started, because it will organically unfold once you start. If you are paralyzed, then you will go nowhere, right? So do the logistics, but really don't try to be everything to everybody, right? Do what is right for you and how you envision yourself being the most successful and the most happy in your practice.
I love that.
And get the support you need, whether that means from mentors, from teachers, from marketing support, billing support. You will likely not be able to do it all on your own, right? You will need a village to support you so that you can be a healer, which is what you wanted to do. So
Yeah, I think that's huge. I think practitioners suffer from what mothers suffer from. It's the nurture bleeds you dry. Like
yeah.
giving it, you end up empty. I've experienced this just in my limited tenure as in my internship. I never had a practice, but that's part of the reason I never had a practice, is because what was being taken, this sounds a little harsh, but taken from me is what it felt like. What was being taken out of me or taken from me in terms of what I was giving left me so just empty at the end of every day that I didn't really know how to come back and be fresh and have more to offer every single day. And I think putting a special emphasis on what it means to nurture the nurturer is definitely something that is super important. Maybe that's why all the ancients practice Tai Chi or Qigong or something like that.
For sure. I became a mother 6 years ago, and I can agree with you 100%. It's exhausting being a mom. It's exhausting being a healer and a caretaker for people's health, both mentally, physically, emotionally, right? You need a lot of space for that, which means your cup needs to be full. Your energy, your emotional state, your physical health in your body. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Gretchen, thank you so much for talking with me.
Yeah, this was great.
Enjoy. Yeah, I would love to do it again. I feel like there's a lot of other subjects we could get into, but
Great. Anytime. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me here. And can I give a shout out? Can I promote my podcast on here?
Of course you can.
I just recently, about 9 months ago, launched a podcast called Elevated Practice Podcast. And I have clinicians, scholars, educators, and entrepreneurs on there. Maybe someday I will have you on it, to help practitioners elevate their practices. So I interview people, and there's no cost. It's free. There's actually hardly any commercials. There's only one commercial per podcast, and it's for a wonderful company called Handcraft Health. So listen to it. I have amazing practitioners and scholars and educators and entrepreneurs on there who give people tips for running their practices and being more successful.
Wonderful. Be sure to like, subscribe, and follow. And do
Thanks.
all the things. Yeah. All right, Gretchen. Well, thank you so much. And hope to talk to you again.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Take care.
Bye.